This is number seven podcast.
Number 7 podcast.
All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive on atomic habits. We're going to be looking at James Clear's book and how small changes can lead to big results. Have you ever heard of British cycling?
Yeah.
They were in a rut for years, but then they made an incredible comeback.
Yeah.
And it all started by making tiny tweaks. We're going to explore how you can use these principles to become the best version of yourself.
It's amazing how often we get caught up chasing those huge transformations when the real magic is actually in the small steps, those consistent small steps.
So true. So like British cycling, for almost a century, they were basically invisible in the cycling world. They'd only won one Olympic gold medal. Can you imagine the frustration? They were so far off the mark that some bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them bikes because they were worried it would hurt their brand.
I can only imagine how demoralizing that must have been. But then Dave Brailsford came on board as the performance director. And he decided, instead of trying to do a complete overhaul, he was going to introduce this philosophy called aggregation of marginal gains.
Interesting. So instead of changing everything at once, they focused on tiny 1% improvements in every area.
Right.
Like the tires they used, the design of the bike seats, even the athletes' sleep patterns.
They even went as far as having the riders wear electrically heated shorts to maintain an optimal muscle temperature. I mean, it sounds a little crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
But the results really speak for themselves.
I'd say so. So after years of being stuck in mediocrity, British cycling won a whopping 60% of the gold medals at the London Olympics. They also dominated the Tour de France, winning 5 times in 6 years. That's an insane turnaround.
Yeah, and that just goes to show how those small improvements, when you do them consistently over time, can lead to some pretty amazing results.
Like compound interest. But for personal growth. I love that. So how does this apply to you? Think about something in your life that you want to change. What 1% adjustments can you make? This brings us to the heart of atomic habits, which is the idea that, habits aren't just actions. They're the building blocks of our identity. James Clear argues that real lasting change doesn't just come from setting goals. It comes from shifting your focus to the kind of person you want to be.
It's about understanding that. You can shape your identity through your habits, and vice versa. Clear talks about 3 levels of change: outcomes, processes, and identity. And although outcome-based goals give you a direction, they often fall short because they don't really address the beliefs and values that are actually driving your behavior.
It's like saying you want to lose weight, but you don't change your mindset about food and exercise.
Yeah.
Those old habits are just going to creep right back in.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to focus on identity-based habits, because when you define the kind of person you want to be, like healthy, disciplined, a lifelong learner, your actions will actually start to align with that vision.
It's like setting your internal compass.
I love that.
Okay, so let's say you figured out who you want to be. How do you actually build better identity-driven habits?
Right.
James Clear gives us this 4-step formula that kind of breaks down habit formation into a simple loop. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
So the cue, is that trigger that kind of starts the whole habit loop in motion?
It could be a specific time of day, a certain location, or even an emotion. It's basically anything that signals to your brain, hey, it's time for this habit.
So if you wanted to start taking your medication every night, you could put the pill bottle right next to your toothbrush. So you see it as a reminder.
Exactly. And then you have the craving, which is that motivational force behind the habit. It's the desire for that change that the habit is going to bring. But remember, it's not about craving the action itself. It's about craving that feeling that the action gives you.
Right.
So you don't crave brushing your teeth. You crave that feeling of cleanliness.
Right. And freshness.
Exactly.
Then you have the response, which is the actual habit that you're performing. It's the thought or action itself.
So you're actually brushing your teeth. Or if it's a more complicated habit, you're sitting down to write for 30 minutes a day. That's the doing part.
That's the doing
of the equation.
Yes.
And then finally, you've got the reward, the positive reinforcement. That strengthens that habit loop.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of satisfaction from completing the task.
Or the positive outcome that it creates.
Right.
And that reward is what makes it all worthwhile. It could be that feeling of accomplishment you get after a workout, or the progress you see in your writing skills. That positive feedback is what keeps you coming back for more.
It's what keeps you going.
Yeah. So we've got the cue, the craving, the response, the actual action itself, and then that reward that makes it all worthwhile. That's the habit loop in a nutshell. Now, let's talk about James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change. These are basically like a practical roadmap for hacking this loop and making it work for you. They're all about making those good habits that you want more obvious, more attractive, easier to do, and more satisfying. And then on the flip side, making those bad habits that you're trying to break invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
So how do we make it obvious?
Well, that's where the first law comes in, make it obvious. This is all about making those cues for your desired habits really stand out so you're more likely to actually do them. One really effective technique is called implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions?
Yeah, it's basically about creating a specific plan for when and where you'll do the habit. No more vague promises to yourself.
Right.
Like, I'll meditate more.
Yeah.
Instead, you'd say, I'll meditate for 10 minutes every morning at 7 a.m. in my living room. You're making it super concrete.
No more excuses.
Exactly. You're removing any ambiguity and making a clear commitment. Another powerful strategy is habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
Have you heard of that?
I think so.
It's basically linking a new habit to an existing one.
Oh, so you're piggybacking on an existing habit.
Exactly. So, for example, you could say, after I make my morning coffee, I'll write in my journal for 5 minutes.
Got it. So we've made it obvious now. How do we make it attractive?
Well, that's where the second law comes in, make it attractive. It's all about boosting your motivation and making the habit something you actually look forward to.
So it's not about forcing yourself to do something you hate.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to make it enjoyable. One way is through temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. What's that?
So you pair an activity you enjoy with one that you need to do. It's like giving yourself a little reward.
So I could say I'll listen to my favorite podcast while I'm working out.
Exactly. Or I'll watch my favorite TV show while I'm folding laundry. It's all about finding those little ways to make those less desirable tasks a little bit more fun. Another great strategy is to join a culture where your desired behavior is already the norm.
Right.
So surrounding yourself with people who share your values can make it so much easier to stick to your habits. Think about joining a running club if you want to be a runner, or finding a community of writers if you're trying to build a consistent writing habit.
You're basically tapping into that power of social support and accountability.
Exactly. The key is to associate your desired habit with positive feelings and experiences.
Okay, so we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive now. Let's talk about making it easy.
That's where the third law comes in, make it easy. It's all about reducing friction and simplifying the process of actually doing the habit. The easier it is, the more likely you are to actually follow through.
It's like removing all those obstacles that are in your path.
Exactly. One way to do this is to reduce the number of steps between you and the habit, for example. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before.
So you're not scrambling around in the morning trying to find your stuff.
Exactly. You're setting yourself up for success. Another tactic is to prime your environment. Create a space that actually supports your desired habit. This might mean organizing your workspace to minimize distractions or keeping healthy snacks readily available so you're not tempted by junk food.
It's about making the healthy choice the easy choice.
Exactly. James Clear also talks about mastering the decisive moment.
The decisive moment. What's that?
It's about optimizing those small choices that can have a big impact on your day.
So like choosing to take the stairs instead of the elevator.
Exactly. Or opting for a healthy lunch instead of fast food. It's about being mindful of those little decisions that can either steer you toward your goals or lead you astray.
I see.
And don't forget the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule.
This one's a game changer. It suggests breaking down new habits into smaller chunks that you can do in 2 minutes or less.
So like instead of trying to write a whole chapter, you just focus on writing for 2 minutes.
Exactly. It makes starting a new habit less daunting and helps you build momentum.
I like that. So we've got the first 3 laws down. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy. What about making it satisfying?
Well, that's where the 4th law comes in, make it satisfying. This is all about reinforcing those positive habits, making them enjoyable so you're more likely to repeat them.
Because let's face it, we're all more likely to do the things that make us feel good.
Exactly. One of the simplest ways to make a habit satisfying is to use reinforcement. Give yourself a small reward immediately after completing the habit.
Like a delicious cup of tea after a productive work session.
Exactly. Or that feeling of satisfaction of checking off a task on your to-do list. Even small rewards can go a long way in reinforcing those positive habits. Another great strategy, especially when you're trying to break a bad habit, is to make doing nothing enjoyable.
Doing nothing enjoyable.
Instead of focusing on what you're giving up, highlight the positive aspects of avoiding that undesirable behavior.
Oh.
So, for example, if you're trying to cut down on sugary drinks, Remind yourself how much better you'll feel without those energy crashes and how much money you'll save.
It's about flipping the script and focusing on the benefits, not the deprivation.
Exactly. Another powerful tool is using a habit tracker.
A habit tracker.
Yeah, to monitor your progress and make it more tangible.
I've heard of those.
There's something powerful about seeing those check marks on a calendar. It's a visual reminder of your commitment, and it can be incredibly motivating, especially on those days when your willpower is a little low.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Speaking of motivation, have you heard of the don't break the chain strategy?
Yeah, I think so. It's about trying not to miss a day of your habit, right? Keeping that chain of successful days going strong.
Exactly. It's like gamifying the process, turning habit formation into a fun little challenge. And the best part is, even if you do miss a day, you don't have to beat yourself up about it.
So there's room for slip-ups.
Absolutely. James Clear says never miss twice. The idea is to jump right back on track as quickly as possible after a misstep, preventing one missed day from derailing your entire progress.
It's a good reminder that consistency doesn't require perfection. We're all human, and life happens.
Exactly. Now, while tracking your progress can be super motivating, it's important to remember that not everything that can be measured should be the main focus. Have you ever heard of Goodhart's Law?
Goodhart's Law? I don't think so. What's that?
It basically states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
So if we get too fixated on hitting a specific number, we might actually lose sight of the real purpose and value of the habit itself.
Exactly. It's like getting so caught up in counting your steps that you forget to actually enjoy the walk, or focusing so much on the number on the scale that you neglect your overall well-being.
It's about keeping things in perspective and remembering why you started in the first place.
Exactly. The key is to use measurement as a guide, and for feedback, not as the sole measure of success.
Okay, so we've talked about making those habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Now, how do we go from just being good to being truly great?
This is where we move beyond those automatic habits and tap into the power of deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice.
It's about stepping outside your comfort zone, pushing your limits, and intentionally seeking out challenges that help you grow.
It's about taking your skills to that next level.
Exactly. James Clear talks about the Goldilocks rule.
The Goldilocks rule.
Yeah, it suggests that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are just the right level of difficulty, not too easy, not too hard.
It's like finding that sweet spot where you're challenged enough to stay engaged, but not so overwhelmed that you just give up.
Exactly. A great example of this is the pointing and calling system used by Japanese railway workers.
Pointing and calling, that sounds a little unusual.
I know it might sound strange, but it's a brilliant example of how conscious effort can improve even the most mundane tasks. These workers literally point out and call out each step of their routine, even for something as simple as checking signals or closing doors.
I see.
It forces them to be more present and attentive, and it significantly reduced errors and accidents. It's a powerful reminder that even when we think we've mastered a skill, there's always room for improvement.
Wow. So how do we find that Goldilocks zone for deliberate practice?
Well, it's important to understand your natural strengths and inclinations. James Clear talks about finding a field where your strengths are actually an asset, not a liability. It's like choosing the right game to play, one that aligns with your unique skill set and personality.
Okay.
He uses this great analogy of someone who is 7 feet tall. They'd obviously have a major advantage in basketball, but might struggle in gymnastics.
Right.
It's all about leveraging your natural talents and predispositions to make that journey of habit formation and mastery more enjoyable and fulfilling.
So it's about playing to our strengths. But does that mean we should just avoid challenges altogether?
Not at all. In fact, James Clear argues that one of the biggest threats to success isn't failure, it's actually boredom.
Boredom.
Yeah. As we get better at something, it's natural for that initial excitement to kind of wear off, and we might find ourselves slipping into autopilot, going through the motions without really engaging with the process.
And that's where deliberate practice comes in.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to keep challenging yourself, staying curious, and continuously learning and growing. James Clear reminds us that professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way.
So it's about making deliberate practice a non-negotiable part of your routine.
Exactly. Prioritizing it even when other commitments and distractions pop up.
But deliberate practice isn't just about mindless repetition.
Right. Definitely not. It's about being intentional, mindful, and always looking for ways to refine and improve your skills. And a key part of that is reflection and review.
So taking the time to step back and analyze your performance.
Exactly. It's about identifying those areas for improvement and adjusting your approach accordingly.
Do you have any examples of this in action?
A great example comes from the LA Lakers basketball team. Their coach implemented a career best effort program where players were encouraged to give their best effort in every aspect of their training, aiming for just a 1% improvement over the season.
Wow.
Yeah, that focus on continuous improvement combined with regular reflection and adjustment was really powerful and helped the team achieve some amazing results. And this principle isn't just for athletes. It applies to anyone striving for excellence in any field.
So whether you're an artist, a writer, an entrepreneur, or just someone who's committed to personal growth, embracing deliberate practice and that power of reflection can be really transformative. We've talked about building those better habits and achieving lasting change, but this journey isn't always easy, is it?
Yeah, you're right. There are definitely some common pitfalls that we need to watch out for, like falling into that all or nothing thinking. We set these huge expectations. We want to change everything overnight, and then we get discouraged when we stumble.
Like expecting to run a marathon without any training.
Exactly. It's just not realistic. Remember, those small habits, they don't just add up, they compound. The key is to focus on consistency rather than intensity. Embrace those small improvements that will accumulate over time.
What about when you're putting in the effort, but you're not seeing the results yet? It's easy to get discouraged.
Yeah, that's what James Clear calls the valley of disappointment.
A valley of disappointment.
It's that phase where you've been working hard, you're putting in the effort, but you're not seeing those big changes yet, and it's so tempting to just give up.
It's like planting a seed and then being disappointed that it hasn't sprouted into a tree overnight.
Exactly. We need to remember that growth takes time. Those small actions you're taking, they're laying the foundation for future growth. It's about trusting the process and having faith that those efforts will eventually pay off.
It's about being patient. And speaking of patience, another challenge is that we often prioritize instant gratification over delayed rewards.
Right. It's that age-old struggle, wanting that immediate satisfaction versus working towards a better future.
Like hitting the snooze button versus getting up early to exercise.
Exactly. Or grabbing that quick fast food meal instead of taking the time to prepare a healthy dinner. Those everyday choices, they might seem small, but they add up over time.
They really do.
James Clear says it perfectly. The road less traveled is the road of delayed gratification.
So it's about being willing to make those small sacrifices now for a more fulfilling future.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that true satisfaction comes from that journey of growth, not just reaching a specific destination.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives?
Yeah, what have we learned from Atomic Habits?
I think one of the most important lessons is that lasting change is not about those big sweeping gestures or overnight transformations. It's about those tiny 1% improvements that compound over time. It's about building a system of consistent, positive actions that will gradually move you closer to your goals.
It's about those small steps.
Yeah, and it's also about understanding that our habits are more than just actions. They're reflections of our identity, the kind of person we believe we are.
So we have to ask ourselves, who do we want to be?
Exactly. And then once we figure that out, we need to align our habits with that vision.
And we have a roadmap.
Yeah.
4 laws of behavior change that can help us make those desired habits
And I bet.
attractive, easy, and satisfying.
And by embracing deliberate practice,
Right.
we can go from simply forming habits to really mastering any area of our lives.
So it's not about being perfect.
No, not at all.
It's about being consistent.
And always striving for improvement.
Embrace that journey of growth. And remember that success is a continuous process of becoming the best version of yourself.
Wow.
So what tiny change can you make today that will set you on that path becoming the person you want to be? Even the smallest adjustments, when repeated over time, can have a ripple effect, leading to extraordinary results. Keep learning, keep growing, and never underestimate the power of those tiny changes.